welcome back to the Daily Record High School Football Insider Show, brought to you by Buffalo Wild Wings of Worcester. I'm the Daily Record's Aaron Dorkson, along with Mike Plant. Mike, thanks for joining me this week.
Thanks for having me.
Before we look ahead to the Week 2 games Friday, let's look back at Week 1 and the action that kicked off the 2015 football season.
Yeah, Aaron, over in Orrville, senior quarterback Red Rider, senior quarterback Luke Smith was near perfect in their opening win over Lyndon McKinley, going 18 for 20, and one of those passes, incomplete passes, was dropped for 5 touchdowns in a 47-13 Orrville win. Brevin Reeby, I had a chance to see the Golden Bears run roughshod over Tusky Valley. Senior quarterback Brevin Reeby, 12 out of 16 for 193 yards and a touchdown. And Nick Strasbaugh scored 3 times, Aaron, by rush, by reception, and scooped up a punt and returned it 36 yards for a touchdown. And then finally, over in Tuslaw, Smithville spotted Tuslaw a 7-0 lead on a 95-yard fumble return, but then controlled the ball most of the rest of the game, rushing for 356 yards as Cody Tipple was the headliner. The fullback bowled his way for 239 yards and 4 touchdowns in their 35-14 win over Tuslaw.
Looking at the big picture from the opening week, what jumped out at me was the great starts for the WCAL and OCC. Both those teams there went a combined 6-2. The Principals Athletic Conference, not so good, 1-6 combined record for those teams. Some Week 1 performers that jumped out at me. I was down in Millersburg, and I kind of dubbed it the Thunder and Lightning Show from Garrett Irvin and Trenton Bridenthal. Irvin's hard rushing. They gave him 289 yards. That's a boatload to start the season, and he had 3 touchdowns. And Trenton Bridenthal, more of a slashy, fast player, scored TDs 3 different ways. Now, it looked like it was going to be a blowout. Triway closed the game with 3 unanswered touchdowns, and their new quarterback, Sean Lacey, really looked good. It wound up only being a 46-40 game. I was really impressed with his throwing arm. He threw for 350 yards. He was throwing some balls 50 yards in the air, hitting deep slant passes. So he looks pretty good. And I think that Triway definitely going to be over 500 this year and challenging the pack. Also throw out there Worcester sophomore running back Trey Mathis. Every year it's fun to see which new faces step up. And he stepped in and almost 100 yards rushing, and he scored 2 touchdowns in the win over Akron Firestone. So that's a look at the Week 1 results. We'll be back after this break and a message from Buffalo Wild Wings.
Hi, I'm me, and I used to be just like you, watching one game at a time, eating terrible snacks. Oh, but thanks to Buffalo Wild Wings' 17-week program, I am now football rich. Now, I'm not talking dollars rich. I'm talking all the games, great food, beer, shares. But don't just take my word for it. Take somebody else's word for it.
Before the B-Dubs program, I thought I was football rich. Turns out, I'm just rich from football.
Damn. Fantastic. If you've ever dreamt of swimming in a sea of football riches, now is the place.
Welcome back, and before we talk about the Week 2 matchups, let's go to our newest full-time staff member, Randy Ranger Worrell. He'd been a part-timer since 2007. He is going to be giving us a preview of the West Holmes at New Philadelphia matchup.
One of the more intriguing matchups in Week 2 will be when West Holmes visits New Philadelphia Friday night. The Knights will be trying to avenge their 19-9 loss last season to the Quakers, which was one of 3 non-league losses suffered by the Knights, which ultimately cost them a 2014 playoff berth. It will be a contrast in styles, as well as New Philly quarterback Logan Bittakofer threw for 237 yards and a pair of scores in last week's 23-22 last-minute loss to defending Division V state runner-up Canton Central Catholic. With temperatures expecting to be hovering around the 90-degree mark, West Holmes' ability to run the football will also be a factor. Garrett Irvin carried the ball 30 times for 301 yards last week in their win against Triway, but connected on just 1 of 3 passes for 10 yards. So it should be a good one Friday night as West Holmes visits New Philly. Back to Aaron and Mike in the studio.
Thanks, Randy, for that good report. Mike, you're going to be at Jack Miller Stadium when the Titans host Orrville, and what's always been one of our best early season matchups.
Yeah, Aaron, and the last few years they've traded victories on the other team's home turf, including a 47-0 win by Triway last year over at Red Rider Stadium. Orville, as I mentioned in the first segment, very impressive last week with 455 yards of offense. Touched on Luke Smith's performance. 3 of his 5 touchdown passes, Aaron, went to Marcus Conway, who we know from the basketball season. Big 6'2", rangy kid who caught 3 touchdowns and had over 100 yards in receiving. And Austin Domer also went over 100 yards rushing. So Orville's going to try to get that balance between run and pass. Triway, as you said in the first segment, offense is really no problem for them. First-year starting quarterback Sean Lacey had an excellent game with over 300 yards passing. Now, they're going to need, as I talked to Tony Lee this week, they're going to need to shore up their rushing defense. They allowed 422 yards on the ground, so they're going to have to be able to kind of tighten up on the defensive end. Another big game, Aaron, is at Waynedale High School, where Ridgewood will come up from down south to play the Golden Bears. Ridgewood, a traditional small school power under veteran coach John Slusser. The big news for Waynedale this week, they'll have Reed Stanley back, the two-way standout who averaged 130 yards rushing and 12 tackles a game last year. He sat out last Friday as a precautionary measure to rest his injured ankle. So he's going to be a big plus for the Golden Bears to go with the passing game of Brevin Reeby, Nick Strasbaugh, Antoine Lewis. Big question mark in that game, Doc, will be Waynedale's line. We've got a couple sophomores on their offensive line. They did a pretty good job last week, but they're stepping up in competition this week. In other games involving Wayne County Athletic League teams, Northwestern makes the short trip to Black River. Dalton does the same for its annual game with Tuslaw. Smithville hosts Akron North. Norwayne is at CBCA, and Rittman goes to South Central. Those games are on Friday, while the Chippewa Chips will play Saturday afternoon at Bison Stadium in Beechwood.
Mike, I'm heading up to Wadsworth to see Worcester go up there. The Generals will try to continue their momentum of the opening win over Akron Firestone. Worcester's defense was excellent, giving up only 7 points, but their offense was held under 200 total yards. Started slow, but Coach Doug Haas said he expected it to take some time. We mentioned earlier Trey Mathis, almost 100 yards rushing, but Haas knows they're going to have to play better against Wadsworth, which dropped a close game against Ashland last week, 28-20, and the Arrows are the OCC preseason favorite. They had a slight edge over Worcester. So this will be a pretty good barometer to see where Worcester's at, in my mind. Going up to Wadsworth, it's natural to kind of compare how Ashland did, so it'll be interesting to watch. Little things sometimes decide a high school football game. I was impressed that Worcester's kicker, William Snyder, made 2 field goals in the 30-yard range. It could come down to something like that. So that's a look at this Worcester game. And in other area games, we're going to have Cloverleaf going to Keystone and Loudonville hosting Ashland Crestview. That'll wrap up this week's edition of the Daily Record High School Football Insider, brought to you by Buffalo Wild Wings.
Make sure to pick up the Daily Record Saturday for our Sports Extra, including complete coverage of all of Friday night's action. Thanks for watching and reading.